Everyone, if you could please take your seats. At this time, we'll call the Joint Committee on Finance to order. Ask the clerk to take a silent roll call to establish the presence of a quorum. A quorum is present. This time I recognize the co-chair for the purpose of a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes of the previous meeting.
Motion is on approval of the minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The chair, the ayes have it. At this time, we'll hear a presentation from the West Virginia Department of Transportation. Secretary Rumball, please come to the podium. Good morning, sir. The floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me back here again today. I'm going to put my glasses on. The screen's a little small for me. Getting old. So, which way's forward? This one? Okay. So you all sent some questions in to us after I presented up at Canaan Valley. We sent a response back. This is sort of a general summary. The performance audit was done by BDO, and they handed out the draft findings in January. Of course, we showed about a $50 million savings. Almost everything that has been in that are initial phases of implementation. We are in the process of selecting the executive leadership positions. We are also incorporating in the current efficiency plan, our moving citizens forward, as well as our strategic plan and recommendations. However, one thing that is and always does happen is it isn't just an impact in one spot, but in multiple places. And so it takes a little bit of time to get all this up and moving. As you see here on this page, it's the new org chart for the DOT. Currently, the chief positions were created, and we're working to get those filled. And we created new divisions in safety and government relations, and we're moving forward with those after we get the chief positions filled. Federal funding from FHWA, some of the questions everyone has about the threshold and how that works. Well, federal highways requires that you have only 10% or less as poor. When you're above that, they require you to move additional federal funds into the bridge program in order to get that down below the 10%. Of course, West Virginia has been one of the worst states in the country, and as most of you know, driving around, you see us working on bridges all over the place. Currently, right now, we're projected on the NHS system, if everything goes all right, to be about 10.1% at the end of the year, which is close to our goal of 10% or less at the end of this 28. That could be a little higher. It could be 10.3, or it could be about 9.9. We won't know until exactly what all projects get finished and taken into account as we go forward. I'm trying to rush through this so we can get to questions because I know you all have a lot to do today. Our strategic plan and goals, we've did an overhaul and a major review, and with that, we have a new mission statement, and that's to provide a safe, efficient, and reliable multimodal transportation system to keep West Virginia moving.
Everyone,
I'd like to say over there, we're people moving people forward. And this centers on safety, service, and stewardship. Part of that came out is also a review of our long-range transportation plan and also the use of our TAMP, much more than it has been in the past. We currently have our STIP out for public comment, and all those plans are available at our website if you wish to look at those. And I encourage you to do so, and please comment as much as possible. Our Economic Development Office was created by Commissioner's Order in 2008, and it was to focus on promoting economic development throughout our projects. In 2026, this year, when we restructured, that Chief Economic Development Officer position was eliminated, and those duties were absorbed by our existing staff. Now, we still do have someone that handles the economic development, and no funds were diverted from the priority projects, but they still handle the industrial access roads, and they use that to leverage to promote economic development. The other thing came about as we developed processes and cycle times in order to measure the efficiency of the job being done and to help make sure that nothing gets lost and things are followed up on accordingly and as fast as possible. The Performance Management Unit was created in 2020. It was originally to serve as a central reporting unit for the DOH. A lot of the data they got and used came out of OASIS and what is known to us as Interims, which is basically our maintenance management system. That is being restructured and moved under the Chief of Policy and Strategy rather than under the Planning and Programming Division. So part of what we will be doing is reorganizing that division to work much more efficiently by pulling data from all of our systems, not just OASIS and DTIMS. A lot of the data that was originally poured into the system was manually inputted at the district levels, and we're getting away from anything hands-on. We're trying to use technology to help make us much more efficient and keep things moving there. One of the major things that everyone has been asking about is the engineering pay analysis, about how we plan to handle retention and recruitment. We have been out attending a lot of job fairs. We have set up capstone projects with several of the universities around the state and continue to do so to work with their engineers in order to help increase their knowledge of what we do and why we do what we do. As everyone has alluded to, and what we can find is a 10% salary increase is not going to help replace the consultants. And it may not even help keep the engineers from leaving. So that's why we're looking at something in excess of that and are working with the governor's office in order to hopefully get something that we think will make a major change in how we retain and attract the best to come work for us and help us do things a lot better. Permitting. This is one of the areas where we had a lot of cost and a lot of savings and a lot of issues. We are currently have a process review going on in our right-of-way and utilities to see that we're doing things as efficient as possibly and how we compare to other states around the country. One of the things that we've taken on completely is not putting contracts out to bid when we do not have the right-of-way clear, when we do not have the utilities being relocated. That has cost us in excess of $30 million in the past, a year, because the contractors would show up to do the work and couldn't work because the utilities weren't relocated or they could not get on the right-of-way. Over the last few years, we've had over 1,500 permits in the last 5 years, and only 2% of those had what we would call dirty permits. But what you have to realize is most of our contracts, we have a lot of paving, which doesn't require any permits, and jobs of that nature that we don't need right away, we don't need utilities. So while it's only 2% that fall in that area, that 2% are some of the larger projects that have major delay claims when this happens. And the last area, when we talked about modernization of the DMV, we currently had a contract out to bid, and it's been awarded, but we're still have it under review. There were 3 phases that were bid to replace and modernize the system with an optional 4th phase, which was to replace the digital titling. Phase 1 was to replace the connection on the West Virginia mainframe to upgrade it and get us off the mainframe onto the cloud. And that has to be completed by January 1st of '28. Otherwise, we will not comply with the rest of the country there. Phase 2 was to tie the driver's license system into that newer upgrade to the cloud so that we can continue working as is. It doesn't change anything. Our process is how we do. It just makes everything off the old mainframe, which has to be shut down, and working out of a cloud-based system, and allows everyone to connect back up. Phase 3 is the bulk of the cost, and it was to totally modernize how everything that we were being done. And we're currently, as I said, reviewing the contract, trying to figure out exactly what we can afford to do and how to go about doing that. So with that, I'll take any questions that you may have on these things.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. For members with questions, if you would, please use your recognition button so that we know who to identify. Senator from Summers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, sir. Going on back on the permitting conversation, the length of time turnaround on permits, and I'm thinking specifically on logging to create an access road to one of those projects, it was running into months. Has that been trimmed down to where when they have this contract, we can get that to them quickly?
Yes, we have actually implemented online permitting, which has sped everything up. And we have been working with industry to get their permits back in a timely manner. We give them a clear deadline on how long it takes to get it normal, and there's an option to accelerate it if they wish to choose that for an additional cost.
And as far as our surrounding states, things that are perhaps not permitted in Ohio, for instance, that we require permits for, have you reviewed some of our surrounding states to see how we can compare for these different industries that require a permit from your office?
I think a lot of the surrounding states, they do require permits. The biggest difference is some of them have different time frames. Some of them do not have a fee. Some of them do. It's all over. There's a whole gambit, depending on which states you look at.
And you talked about your engineers. Are we at the optimal level for engineers? I've had some people that indicated that you were top heavy on engineers, but that doesn't sound like the case from listening to your comments.
We are not. We have a huge cost in multiple districts. We're 3 to 4 engineers plus short, easily in management positions, and we're using consultants as management because of those shortages. And it's even spread to central office that we have consultants sitting in there managing our folks and doing those engineering duties. And it's very costly. It's much more efficient to have a salary raise and cut those consultant management contracts off than it is to continue down this path that we're on.
Thank you, sir. That's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions? Senator from Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, before I get started, I just want to thank you and your team for your immediate response to Lewis and Upshur counties during the flooding. I think I personally saw firsthand the amount of expediency when it comes to picking up over 10,000 tons of debris. And I think the DOH teams for being there assisting the National Guard was a great help, at least visually. Do you mind commenting real quick before the audit, from your perspective, how that response went?
Yes, again, since I've came into this position, our philosophy on floods has been totally different than what it has been in the past. The past would go in and do initial, cut the road open, and then they would disappear, and it would take years and years for them to get things cleaned up. Our philosophy now is, and this is in my discussions with the governor, we're agreed that we need to go out and return these roads to their original or better condition as fast as possible, because we need to give normalcy back to the folks and the citizens as quick as possible. Their lives are traumatically disrupted in a flooding event. And if we can get them to and from the grocery store, to and from gas, even to go get cleaning supplies or whatever they need, The faster we can do that, the better it is for them, the better it is for all of us. So our philosophy is we hit these flooded areas and work and bring folks in from other districts and knock it out as fast as we can.
Awesome. Well, I really do appreciate that. To the audit, generally it looks like the potential savings could be about $50 million. Is that correct?
Correct.
You started out, your literally first sentence was everything is in some sort of a phase of implementation. Will we see any of these savings, or at least be able to complete anything by January as we talk about the next year's fiscal budget?
Some things, yes, and some things, no. Some of these processes are going to take a couple years to go through. Like we have the IT strategic plan that's being looked at as part of this, and it's a 2-year plan as they go through and review the programs that we're using and try to consolidate and eliminate. It will take a while. Other things, like the economic development change we made, it was already done before the audit was really completed because we've seen that as a problem and started moving. A lot of these things, we have a schedule, and we're trying to adhere to our schedule as much as possible.
And when we see those savings, obviously I think everybody in the room wants more money to go to road paving. Can you give us an update real quick on the surplus money, where that stands, and how we will see these savings? Will you come to the legislature and report these savings? Personally, I'd like to see all these savings go to more paving of roads. Tell us how we can expect to see that.
These savings will roll over into the general funds, which will go out to be used on the roads and bridges throughout the entire state. It's like any money we save, it goes back in to do additional paving or bridge work, whatever's needed, as much as possible. And we will continue to report on this the whole time we're going through on our internal efficiency audit, the BDO audit. We're trying to be as transparent as possible with what we're doing and how we're doing it.
Well, I think sometimes we can lose track of things, so if you don't mind keeping that as a top of priority for us so that we know what we complete and what we're excelling at. I do want to bring up technology. Is it true that you have 266 systems in DOH? That just seems...
That I do not know offhand.
Okay.
I know that when we had our audit for our strategy, there were 18 different areas in which that we needed work. The most being data governance and how that should be handled and done is what came out of that.
So just, I think your report, we talk about 10.1 potential savings for technology. Yesterday in our meetings, we heard about technology being, it's just, as a 31-year-old, I would like the government to get out of, it feels like I'm in 2005. I'd like us to get towards 2026 eventually. What can we do to make sure that technology isn't a hurdle for DOH? I just feel like we should be able to solve this at some point.
Well, I really think with this administration, they have granted and asked us to use technology as much as possible, which I'm totally in agreement with. When I came in a year and a half ago, everything was being done on paper. All this performance, the performance management division created everything on paper. We are trying to get away from paper as fast as possible. Timekeeping is a big issue for us, and we are currently figuring out ways in order to use technology to get away from multiple people trying to track our health of time and our equipment and our materials are being put into the system. Right now it has to touch multiple hands and it's being done on paper. We're getting away from that. We're getting, our maintenance guys, we're testing, tablets out there for them to use a drop-down menu that tells them that they're putting down so many tons of stone on such and such route, and it feeds it all back into the system. And that's speeding things up because the way it was done in the past, they'd write it down. Once a week, they'd go turn that in. Then someone else would take it and try to type it in and read their handwriting. And sometimes a 4 would be mistaken for a 9, a 6 for a 5, and the quantities get off. So it made a lot of errors in the system, and a lot of the data was bad. As they say, garbage in, garbage out. So trying to move forward with technology and utilize it is where we're pushing.
So do you have a technology team? Do we outsource all this? Do we use the Office of Technology in the state? I mean, do we call on, like, who are we going to call on next? Are we going to call on the Amazons of the world to begin to move to that direction, or
we work with the Office of Technology. We have an IT division in the Department of Transportation, and then we have certain folks over certain programs that work together. And part of what they're doing is collaborating and working together to try to eliminate what I've asked them to do, is try to eliminate all paper everywhere. And so we're converting forms over to electronic format. We're using different software to bring things together much better and much faster.
So I think your audit recommends, or your audit points out, I think that the work over the last, I think, several years with the DMV has expedited wait times and everything at the DMV. You touched on the DMV, I think, again, on some technology upgrades. Are we doing it right at the DMV on technology? I hate to jinx myself here publicly, but I do get less complaints
The DMV
as of 9/28. So I'm going to jinx myself, but it feels like the technology has done pretty well at the DMV.
It has. They've embraced it pretty well. They have managed to get wait times down. They bounce around, but they anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes at the most. It goes up and down just depending on the time of month or what month you're in. However, we think that once we can go through this modernization, finishing modernizing things over at the DMV, with the most important thing is getting off that mainframe. Once they get off that mainframe and get it tied back in, we can start looking at either bringing up so that most of the functions you can start doing online a lot more. And so that's what we're trying to do, is to make the DMV more open, more online usage in order to be a lot more efficient.
Can you walk me through how that, and maybe your answer is no here, but can you walk me through how that saves us money in the long term? I mean, do we own this system? How does that work?
Yes, you know, that's the intent, is us to own this system. And the intent is, once it's modernized and folks are doing stuff online, we're going to start, we're collecting data on, you know, what it cost for us to open or keep open all these offices everywhere. And as we modernize, folks are going to be doing a lot more online. They're going to quit going into the office. There's no reason to go in the office. So when that happens, the cost to keep all these open, there's going to be some that it will cost us money to keep open. In those instances, we may look at closing them, but we're putting together a mobile unit to travel around. So the folks that the office area we close down, instead of having it open all month long, it may only be open for 1 week a month or 2 weeks a month instead. So it's more efficient, and we pull up with a mobile unit. We're not paying a rent and the lease on there. The full-time employees come with that, and it performs the same service, just a mobile. And it would travel around sort of similar to the bookmobile principle. It shows up and takes care of things.
So you're finding here on the modernization project, I guess, to replace digital titling, is this are we going to need any supplemental funding for this project come next year?
The digital titling part, it wasn't part of the cost. It was an option to tie it in or not right now. It was sort of modernized when it was originally created and seems to be functioning fine at the moment. Again, we're looking at the cost that we got to do those first 3 phases and trying to figure out how far we can go forward with the current contract we have based on the budget constraints.
All right, I hate to repeat my question, but do you anticipate us having to fund any additional monies to upgrade this technology? I I think we should upgrade technology in every state agency, but I know it's to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars. Is there a number by chance?
Well, this system, the way the funding works there is all the funds they receive in over to DMV, they hand to highways, and then they ask for their budget money from highways. So what happens when this comes in under contract, it comes in over the budgeted amount that they had allocated. It'll take additional funds from highways in order to fund this modernization. And that's part of what is under review right now, because the bids came in over the budgeted amount that they had set aside or had asked for that. We're trying to review and figure out how to make this work because it all comes from the road funds and the DMV funds. And so.
Well, I love the idea of saving money, but I hope you can keep us updated. We don't need any less money going to roads, so if you can help us solve that, that would be greatly appreciated. Mr. Chairman, thanks for the time.
Further questions? Delegate from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary, thank you for being here today. I have a question. I'd like to draw your attention back to finding number 4 on the Economic Development Office. Implicit in the BDO report is perhaps the elimination of that resource, and your written response to the questions basically said that position was eliminated and those duties transferred to another individual who accepted that on top of their existing responsibilities.
That's correct.
Okay. One of the concerns I have is that the wording on your slide was that the WVDOT Economic Development Office would focus on promoting economic development. One of the concerns with some of the successful and hopefully additional projects that we will bring to West Virginia is our ability to support the execution of those projects. So for instance, if we bring in data centers, some of the larger hyperscaler projects are forecast to bring in literally thousands of construction workers, 2,000, 5,000 more construction workers. And frankly, if I've driven by the Nucor site and the construction traffic is significant, I can't imagine with some of these hyperscaler projects what that will mean to those local communities that today do not have, if you will, the roads and access, and how that will just jam things up. So is your office able to, frankly, put the resources in place and make the roads, permit the roads, facilitate the traffic studies, to review the traffic studies, and make that happen so that these projects don't get slowed down and that, frankly, the local communities have more opposition because of the roadblock or the grid block that possibly might contribute to their local traffic situation?
So yes, that's part of what this person does. They take the information as projects like that come in. We are reviewing traffic impact studies for what all sites are provided to us. Last week, for example, we sat down and went to Mason County and discussed with a bunch of folks about the development going on, what all needs done, and how we're trying to work with some of these developers in improving the roads in those areas.
Okay. I know that in discussions on things like microgrids and data centers, one of the key topics that's frankly somewhat influences choices as to where these are going to be made is speed to power. So implicitly, a critical factor is, do you have the power to support this facility? But frankly, if the power is there, but the roads and the infrastructure drag out the construction, then we're losing on that, and that will not play well or give us a good reputation if something that we did not anticipate, such as the ingress and egress of the workforce negatively impacts the construction timeline. So my encouragement is, let's make sure that for this $170,000 in savings on this particular finding, that, if you will, we're penny wise and pound foolish, and all of a sudden the economic development was not realized because of traffic congestion.
We understand, we have our own concerns. Again, budgets are limited. If we go one place or not another, we are trying to work around the entire state with development everywhere we can and assist as we can. We had a lot of issues similar to these. If you all remember years ago with the oil and gas industry, when they came in, I think if you will get with the oil and gas industry, you'll find out that we changed a lot of things in how we work with them as partners on a lot of our roads. And we are trying to use that same philosophy with these folks that are coming in now.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I hope we're successful. One last consideration in there is that not only just the ingress and egress of particularly the construction workforce, but it would be doubly problematic if during one of those high traffic periods there was an emergency and ambulance or fire or something like that couldn't get through to render service because of those traffic jams. So thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate. Further questions? Delegate from the 72nd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here. Couple questions, and I'm going to apologize. I wasn't here in June, so I missed your presentation, so I'm trying to understand. You had the $33 million, I think, that you referenced in performance oversight and permitting, I think is what the conversation just was. So were those internal projects, road projects? Because, I mean, every other project I've ever worked on, you had to have the permits in place. So was that just something that the department did?
They issued, and this is why we sort of call them dirty permits or dirty certs. When we put out a project, in the project, there is a certification that's placed in there that says the right-of-way is clear and the utilities are clear.
But that's when you put it out, DOT?
When we put them out.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, keep going, I'm sorry.
And so what happened in the last administration, instead of saying they're clear, they would say it will be clear by this date. And that's fine if you meet that date. But when you don't meet that date, it ends up costing millions of dollars. And that was the problem we ran into.
Completely understand delay charges, so I'm glad we're making that change. On the presentation that you had in June, you said that you were going to have those areas detailed by September and implementation in November, and start adjustments in January. I guess, so to follow up on one of the other questions is, can you provide us what those implementations are, and when you come for your budget for next year, reconcile the anticipated savings that are going to move over to pave roads for us? Can you have that as one of your items?
We're trying to track the cost on everything we're doing on all of our efficiency plans and change it. We realize that some of these ideas that come up, they may not be as efficient as we first thought, and others may be more efficient.
Sure.
So we're trying to, track everything we're doing.
I think it's just good to follow up on those things. Following up on the senator from Summers, he was talking about permits in the permitting portal. The portal was great. It works well. I've noticed in some of your districts that they are requiring paper permits in advance to getting it submitted in the portal, so that they can look at those in advance and not track the accurate time of how long it takes. Are you aware of those situations?
No, I'm not, but I am now, so we'll take care of that.
So it's okay to submit those via the portal without submitting those to
It should be going
paper
via the
first?
portal. They should not be doing anything in paper.
Okay, good, thank you. So the last couple questions, following up on the senator from, my senator actually, from Harrison. On the slide that was presented back in June on the technology, it had $75 million in savings as it related to the DMV issue. Can you explain that 1.75? Because I couldn't understand it. If you can't, because you use something different, I understand.
That's moving off. It's that last slide that I had in this presentation about the modernization that we predict once we got through the cost that we would be saving that much, moving off the mainframe and collecting things that way. Overall, we'll see savings.
So savings of 1.75 million. It's okay, thank you. So you were talking about moving off the mainframe. In your budget hearing in 25, you asked for a $5 million improvement for DMV modernization. And when we asked on that, you followed it up with the proposed RFP that was back from 24.
Yes.
It was 46-ish million dollars.
Yes.
Okay. So is this the same thing?
This is the same thing. There were a lot of issues with that contract we found out later. That was when I had first came in and wasn't familiar with it. When I actually got into it, the DMV was wanting more done than was in that contract. And so there would have been a lot of additional, I guess, change orders or supplementals would have to be done to make that contract work. It was decided that that was probably not the best thing to do. So we didn't go forward with that contract, came out and did a new one, which is what this one is.
So the previous one, they wanted additional things. So additional sounds
Yes.
like more dollars. So if it was 45 million before, how much is it now?
Well, their budget was around the 46 million. The current contract that's been awarded, I believe, is 63. And that's why we're trying to figure out.
63 million. That was a low bid?
That was the lowest acceptable through the whole process that they went through. There was a technical side and then a bidding side, and the scores
So
were
you
combined.
threw out anybody who wasn't qualified, so like a pre-qual?
Sort of like that. They did a technical scoring, and they had to have a minimum acceptable score in order to include their cost, the way it was set up.
So minimum acceptable, so you did all the scoring on the technical before you opened the bids?
Correct, and we still opened the bids on the ones that didn't have that minimum score. We opened everybody's bids, but when it came down, we ended up with two that were able to go forward, and this was the lower of the two.
So there were only two that met the minimum scoring?
Yeah, I believe there was 5 or 6 bidders.
Okay. How much, can you give me an idea of what those numbers were across the board?
Across the board, I think, this, now, don't hold me to this, anywhere from 7 million up to 100 million, I believe. So they were
7 to
all-
100 million?
Yes. And you can understand why some of the lower ones didn't meet, because the technical scores sort of prohibited them.
Yeah, so I guess I'm trying to reconcile between the 45 million that the previous DMV commissioner, I guess, or secretary or whoever.
It was the same commissioner, but the secretary has changed. They took bids. My understanding was they took bids in September or October the year before I came in. They did not award the contract or do anything with it. I come in and folks were trying to rush me to go ahead and sign the contract. And then we got over here talking with everyone about the contract and its contents. And after a thorough review, it wasn't what they thought they were getting, and what was in the contract was two different things.
So going up 18 million or 17 million, obviously, we want to pave as many roads like you said.
Correct.
So
That's
how
why
much
it's
was the
under
other
review.
one that met the minimum qualifying score?
I think it was 70 some.
It was set. Can you get that information of all the bids, pricing, and the scoring for the committee? I mean, it's
Yeah.
obviously an additional $18 million.
It's out on, it's posted on the website. Well, actually, I've got a paper here that has it on there. The second one was 69.6. The low was 63.5. And the range went from 7.9 to 101.5.
Well, okay, so what were the other, what you said there were 5 or 6, what were just the
There
other
was
two?
a plain 30 million across the board, and there was a 28.7.
But they didn't meet the minimum technical?
Yeah, they did not meet the minimum scoring.
So I do contracting occasionally. Why would we open the prices if they didn't meet the minimum score? And was the minimum score established in the RFP?
This was done through the purchasing.
Yeah, but you're the secretary. You set the scoring criteria, right? You're the one that would have set this criteria.
Not necessarily. We follow the purchasing division process. We set the contract up, and they go through and they rate what they're going to score each subject on, and all that's done ahead of time. There's a matrix created, and
Sure.
Then a team sits down and goes through and does that.
But you didn't approve, you don't have any approval with that? Because normally
I
the owner
reviewed the
does.
I reviewed the RFP before it went out,
So you approved it?
Yeah.
Which is fine. I'm just trying to understand. Okay.
and then we followed the purchasing division process through the rest of the contract.
So you evaluated all the tests, and I'm sorry to go down a rabbit hole to my colleagues. I'm just trying to understand. So interviewed 2? Do you interview all of them? Do you interview as part of the RFP process? I know when I do that, sometimes I have to.
My understanding of the way it worked is they submitted a technical proposal in. It was rated. They interviewed all the teams. That was all done. And then they opened the scores.
So they interviewed 2,
No, they interviewed all.
but you said they didn't meet the technical
Correct.
qualifications.
But
You wouldn't
the
interview if they
is
didn't meet the
part-
technical.
The interview is part of the technical side.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right, now I understand. Okay. Well, I guess then my question is, and my request would be, can we get a copy of? So the RFPs are online, but
RFP's online.
How about the score sheets from the interview?
The score sheets? I don't know. I'll have to check with purchasing division. Again, that's not one I'm over. We work through them.
I mean, I have to do interviews as
we
well in my
have 'em.
personal
I
life.
don't
You
know
get
what
their
the
score
policy
sheets and
is.
everything that have to be completed.
I understand.
so.
I just don't know what their policy is on this.
Okay, well, as the secretary, I'm asking if you could check with purchasing and provide those to the
We will check
committee.
and try to provide them.
If staff would note that, I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that's all I have.
Thank you, Delegate. Further questions? Delegate from the 77th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you for the update and coming today. And my question is not a question, it's just simply one word: drainage. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Further questions? Senator from Summers for the second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question about process based on one of your earlier answers. You said down at the Nucor site there on 2 that you were just meeting with them about members of the community about upgrades to that road. So it's been at least, I guess, 3 years ago, members of this body toured that facility prior to the groundbreaking, and it was very clear that that 2 was inadequate for the amount of truck traffic that was going to be on that road. So just going forward, process-wise, is there anything that's been implemented that would allow, when we have these large projects coming on, that we can go ahead and start addressing the road at the initiation of that project? Because we're at least 3 years down the road and we're just now talking about that road.
I understand that. That's part of the reason we made the changes with our economic development office. We were not following up or doing anything at all. We are trying to work with these folks as much as we can ahead of time before they come in. The biggest problem we run into is it's like on Nucor. They came in and started building. They really didn't contact anybody. No one followed up. At that point, if we jump out and start working on the road, shutting it down, it prohibits any traffic getting to and from and prolongs everything. So on Nucor, we ended up just having to tough it out, more or less more or less. With these folks, we're trying to work with them to figure out how much traffic's coming in. One site isn't too bad, but when you start combining 2, 3, 4 sites, suddenly it is overwhelming. And trying to figure out how to fund that, how to get it done in a timely manner, going through our processes, is very difficult. And so we're trying to work with them similar to the way we work with oil and gas to solve the issues.
Okay, well, that corridor is going to see even more growth in the future.
We hope.
And I would hope when you work through that process that you're able to try to plan for the future and just not react to what's going on today.
We do know to make a 4-lane up through there is over $2 billion. And I have no access to that kind of funding at this point.
All right, thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Further questions? Senator from Randolph.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, thank you very much. To echo the comments from the Senator from Harrison, thank you to you and your team and the boots on the ground in Upshur and Barber counties that have responded to the floods. I saw one of the projects where they were rebuilding an entire road using the massive shot rock to replace it in very difficult conditions. It was hot, it was emotional, it was just everything. And those guys were out there 7 days a week, just continuing to work hard on the recovery efforts. So on behalf of the citizens of those counties, thank you very much, and please extend that to your team.
I will pass that along.
Couple of things here I want to touch on. The DMV modernization project. I see where it says optional phase 4 to replace digital titling. That digital titling hasn't been around a long time, has it?
It has not. I think the thought behind that at the time from the DMV is if the cost came in and was efficient enough that instead of having one system doing everything over here and a different system there, that they should all be on the same platform. And that was why they put it in as an option. Whether they choose to do so yet or not has not been determined. We haven't determined what phases we're going to continue as the contract as awarded.
So it sounds like there's two different systems, a digital titling system and another system? What's the other
Yes.
system do?
The other system is like the driver's license and other functions that are used at the DMV.
Is the digital titling system working? I just recently bought a vehicle and thought everything worked well.
Yes, it seems to be working very well.
So why would we even have an option to replace it?
Again, if you look at this, it's 2 or 3 years down the road. The thought was that they would check and see about getting them on the same platform so they all look the same, because it would be like 2 separate programs and 2 different pages.
So I'm assuming that if we have a digital titling platform that's working and working well, was that the winner of the awarding of the other side of it?
No, it was not.
Did that company bid?
Yes, they did.
Where were they in the hierarchy?
They were one of the ones that didn't have the high enough technical score.
They didn't have a high enough technical score when they're already providing service and doing well at it?
Correct.
Where were they in the pricing, out of curiosity?
They would have been 3rd in pricing. Or
Okay.
they would have been low if they had got a high enough technical score.
So they were lower than the awarded contract?
Yes.
By how much?
33 million.
Wow. Okay. So if we end up with 2 different platforms, are those platforms going to have to integrate?
Yes.
Is that going to be an additional cost? Can they integrate?
They can integrate. It's more or less moving to the cloud, so it's not that, it won't take much to do it, to have 2 different platforms, is my understanding. I'm not the technical expert here.
Okay.
I've asked that same question.
Okay. Yeah, I would appreciate the delegate's request of that project. Is $30-some million for a vendor that we're already using and is doing a good job. That just seems odd to me. So I would, when you submit that to the committee, I'd
Now
like to
you
see
can
that.
understand why we're reviewing and trying to figure out how much we want to do or not do.
Just as a knee-jerk reaction, I thank you for that review, and I hope that that review is thorough, because that $30 million could go to a lot of roadway projects and things of that nature. So I appreciate you doing that. Moving on to bridges, I think you've made great advancements in the bridge stuff. I know there are a lot of projects that are still out there, either under contract or awaiting funding or have funding but haven't gotten started or in the middle. That 10% could be right above or right below by the end of this year. With the projects that you have funded or on the plan, how low do you think that number can get over the next few years?
I truly can't say. I would like to see it at zero, to be honest. I don't want any poor bridges.
Right, I agree. I just didn't know realistically, like with the plan of work, if we expect in 2 years to be down to 8%, 7%.
Our goal was to hit the 10% by 28, and we've been pushing as hard as we can to get things done quicker. And we want to continue to push. You know, our goal was below 10% on the NHS. I would like to see all the bridges come down below the 10%. When you incorporate all the bridges in, it's even the ones that we don't look after. Some of the ones are city bridges. It's still over 12, which I would like to see it get down below 10. And so we're going to try to get the numbers down as low as we can over the next few years.
Okay, thank you. Final topic, permitting as it relates to broadband projects. I've been hearing out and about that there's a new permitting process coming through with broadband projects. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
I am not exactly sure. I mean, we have our digital portal that we use for all the permitting.
Well, what I'm being told is there's a new process that's being discussed where instead of, if you have 25 miles, instead of presenting a project or a permit for a project for those 25 miles, it's being broken up into, I think it's 10,000 feet. Aerial is a max for one permit, and 500 feet underground is a max for one permit. So instead of having one permit and one permit fee, you could end up with multiples. Is that accurate?
Haven't heard that.
Well, that is really good news, because there were fees that I was told that were associated with that broadband service providers have not been, did not budget for, and having to go through the benefit of the bargain round and everything else. These were just added costs that they did not have budgeted. So I'm glad to hear that that is inaccurate. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I really appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator. Further questions? Delegate from the 92nd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary Rumbaugh, for being here. I just want to go back to the DMV modernization product. I believe the senator from Harrison alluded that there's some 200 different systems with the DOT, but there's only 2 in the DMV. Is that correct? 2 separate systems?
No, they have to use Oasis like everybody else, and I'm sure they have a couple others. It's not as simple as just using 1 or 2 systems.
So this modernization project is to update both of the systems or just one of the systems?
It's to update everything. It's the most important thing is getting off the old mainframe. It will sunset. The use or the allowed use of using the mainframe has to be done before 1/28.
Sure.
And so that's the main purpose behind this contract, which is phases 1 and 2 in the contract that was put out.
And then you said that one of the companies that has one of those systems now is doing very well. Is that correct? Why would we want to replace that if they're doing well?
The DMV is happy with their performance on the digital titling.
So why would we want to replace them?
Because that's all their contract was for the digital titling. We're not really replacing them. They wanted, it was one of the things that they just wanted an option that if the budget would allow, and if things, when it got down, if it was 2 different systems and they were totally.
So we're not necessarily replacing that one, but we are replacing the other system.
Yes. We
And-
have to replace the.
And
we
the
have to do
company
that.
that has the good system that we have now, they were one of the bidders, correct? That was
Correct.
I believe you said $30 million?
Yes,
Okay, but they didn't meet certain criteria. They didn't get high enough on the list
correct.
at that $30 million. Were they given an opportunity to get up to that level, still under the $63 million that we awarded?
As far as I know, they followed the purchasing division process exactly the way they were supposed to for the technical side and the cost proposal side. Everything was done according to the procedures.
So it seems to me that we could have two separate systems from two separate companies that aren't necessarily going to integrate together. Why wouldn't we give preferential treatment to the company that is working very well already and is $30 million below what we awarded? And what does awarded but under review mean?
Awarded means they were found to be the lowest acceptable bid. The contracts have not been signed yet.
So we could go back and review and change who we award the contract to.
I don't know. I'm not an expert in procurement or purchasing division contracts. I'm more of an expert on our construction contracts at the DOT. We work this through purchasing division and followed their procedures. They guide you through it.
So if it's still under review, why would we have awarded it? I'm trying to come to an understanding of why we would pay $30-some million more for a product from a different company, from one that already has a system in the DMV and, to your testimony, is doing very well. Why would we not stay with the same company for $30 million less, or even giving them an opportunity to meet the criteria and maybe it be $40 million, but still you're saving some $20 million. I'm not sure I follow why we wouldn't do that.
The way the contract went out, is my understanding is everyone was to provide certain criteria and certain information on how to tie all this in, on all 4 phases, 1, 2, 3, and 4. They were given that same opportunity, set through the same interviews. When they were judged against each other, 2 had high enough scores, 3, or I guess 4 didn't have high enough scores.
And in the scoring process, how much was price a consideration?
The technical score was 75%, the price was 25%.
Only 25%.
Yes.
So we're willing to pay $30-some million more for a product because it's only worth 25%. I'm not sure I understand that rationale. Would the lower bid, you're saying it would not meet all the criteria that we needed for the DMV? Is that your testimony?
That was my understanding of the scoring, yes.
Okay. But we did not give them an opportunity to get to that level that was needed.
They had that opportunity when they submitted their proposal in. I don't know if there was any discussion after that. Again, I'm not an expert on purchasing division contracts.
I would think for $30 million, we would give them another opportunity to meet that and at least come in under $63 million.
Again, that's why I've said it's under review to decide if we want to go forward with the full contract or in part or at all.
Okay. I think the gentleman from the 72nd earlier alluded to we had allocated $40 million or $46 million or whatever to this project. Is that correct? Was that a supplemental?
Yes. No, it wasn't a supplemental. At that time, they were asking for $5 million on the previous contract that they had tried to move forward with.
Okay, and now it's up to $63 million. So where do we get the other $15 to $20 million that we need to pay for this contract at $63 million?
Exactly why it's under review.
So we'll need another supplemental, or it's going to be requested in the budget? Is that what you're saying?
I don't know what we'll need. Again, we're reviewing it whether we want to proceed as a whole or in part or at all. And until we get through with that, then I don't know if we'll need to ask for anything or everything.
So if we say no, then you have to go with a lower bid, correct?
Not necessarily. We just don't do the contract at all and have to figure out another way to do it. But we've got to do something to get off the mainframe.
Well, I would agree with that. We need to get off of the mainframe. I'm just concerned with paying double for a system to get off of the mainframe when it may not be needed. But thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate. Further questions? Senator from Randolph for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll just be quick. Mr. Secretary, another thought popped in my mind when you said we have to get off the mainframe, because we heard that yesterday from DOHS about timeframes in which we have to get off the mainframe. Normally, when I've bid projects like this or been involved with them, there are criteria to meet the expectations. Out of curiosity, what was the contract you awarded? What was the time frame for implementation?
They were given the dates, and everyone turned in their different time frames on which to meet the different phases, and they were given so long to do those. It was part of the judging and the technical scoring.
So do you know what the implementation time frame was for the one you awarded?
For which part? Because the
I guess
time
the
frames were
project as a whole.
different. The time frames were different for each phase.
Full implementation?
Full is years. I don't know if I have that or not. They're all different depending on which one.
I'm interested in the one that we awarded and the one.
For the one that we awarded was 10 months from start for phase 1, 20 months from start for phase 2, and phase 3 is, there's a lot of variables in there on it.
Okay. What about the one that was 30 million?
Phase 1 was 12 months, phase 2 is 24 months, and phase 3 is 54 months.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions? Delegate from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The vendor that may be selected for this DMV change, have they done this in other states? Do you know?
It's my understanding they've completed this in Arizona and have 2 other states in which they're working.
Okay. Do we know if they have any connection to the governor's office prior to this bidding?
I have no knowledge of that.
Okay. All right. Another question. On Route 62 from Mason down below Clifton, there's a bridge that's been under construction for some time. I believe it's with DOH employees, maintenance crew from District 2, if I'm correct, or District 1.
District 1.
Do we have a completion date on that bridge?
Is that the end step? No, that's not it.
Below Clifton before we get to West Columbia?
That's the Ian Quick Bridge. It should go pretty fast. It comes in sections. Basically, the forms, the rebar are all in it. It's bolted together. They pour the concrete in the deck, and then they come back and pour the parapets on it, and it's done. Usually in about a month after they get the abutments in, which abutments are in. I think they're already pouring, aren't they?
So the abutments are done?
Yeah, it's my
So do we have an anticipated completion date?
We can get you one. I don't know off the top of my head.
And then also, and I know that we've talked about because of the potential heavy traffic starting to happen on Route 62 coming down from Pomeroy and coming across the bridge and so on. What are our plans for the slip work that's there on 62?
We've already had crews out there core drilling it,
Okay.
And as soon as the geotechs review those cores, then we'll see what the solution will be to fix them.
Do you think you can do that with your own crews, or is it going to be such a massive fix because of the length of what we're looking at? Half a mile, 3/4 of a mile, something like that?
I can't say until the geotechs get through looking at it. It could end up being the soil now. It could be something our crews do, or it could be a major wall that
Yeah.
costs millions and millions of
Yeah,
dollars.
similar to
just
what we
don't
had to
know.
do above Ravenswood there years ago. Okay, that's what I need to know. Thank you very much.
Further questions? If not, Secretary Rumbaugh, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Up next is the update on the Rural Health Transformation Program. Joining us today is Cabinet Secretary Arvind Singh. Dr. Singh, welcome.
Mr. Chair, am I good to begin?
Yes, please.
Thank you all for the opportunity to provide an update on the West Virginia Rural Health Transformation Program. Today, I'm going to focus on the financial status of the program, our progress since the last legislative update, and the status across each of the 7 pillars and the controls that we have in place to validate compliance and accountability. And our objective here is to be as transparent as possible and show where the program stands today. All right, as it was introduced, I'm Arvind Singh. I'm the Secretary of Health for the Department of Health. And before we begin, I do want to recognize our team. We've hired a really capable team, and it's almost like we're in a startup environment. Things are moving very fast, and I just want to really give accolades to that team. They have been working day and night for our citizens, so I really appreciate the work they're doing. So today's update will begin with some major updates since the last meeting, as I mentioned, followed by a brief strategy recap, and then I'll go through the funding status by program. I'll also provide initiative-specific updates, and I'll go over some key deadlines and CMS requirements. So we've continued advancing funding opportunities. We're reviewing applications. We're strengthening our oversight processes, and we are starting to prepare for implementation. This next section will highlight several important milestones and address some questions that were raised at our last discussion. So before I review the milestones, I do want to briefly address a topic that was raised during our previous discussion. And I want to be very clear that RHTP is operating in compliance with federal requirements and always has been. Since our last meeting, we've continued working very closely with CMS. We've strengthened our finance and operational controls to ensure that the funds are trackable, measurable, and aligned with federal expectations. As applications are being evaluated, all the submitted budgets are being thoroughly reviewed against our CMS guidelines and allowability standards for the dollars that are going to be spent. Also, the topic of contractor support came up during our last discussion. Through our discussions with our states across this nation and other RHTP programs, we have confirmed that leveraging contractor support is common practice. In fact, almost every single state in this country is utilizing contractors, especially with the tight implementation timelines and administrative requirements associated with such a large federal program. Our approach is consistent with many other states. For example, the Nevada RHTP director stated on a national call that they're utilizing 4 contracting firms in addition to their over a dozen staff. So a few of the milestones you see here on the screen since May. We've conducted an on-site visit with CMS, and as I mentioned earlier, we remain engaged with them with bi-weekly calls. making sure that we follow all the federal expectations and reporting requirements. We've established controls to validate compliance, accountability, and our measurable outcomes. We've finalized over 30 priority metrics for CMS. We also held a year two strategic planning session to help position our program for success, looking very closely at outcomes and sustainability. And today, we can say that we have drafted 100% of year one funding opportunities, which is over 35 solicitations, and we have posted over 80% of those publicly. We are continuing to release funding opportunities, which I will cover in more detail in the upcoming slides. We're tracking progress through our program dashboards, and we're managing more than 35 funding opportunities. We also continue to engage our stakeholders through a growing listserv, ongoing communications, our general advisory and health tech Appalachia investment panels. We are also following standardized application review processes. We're compiling our data for CMS reporting and collaborating with other states to share best practices and lessons learned. Put simply, we remain focused on compliance, accountability, and responsible stewardship of federal funds while continuing to move the program forward. Before discussing the funding in greater detail, I do want to just briefly mention and revisit the strategy behind RHTP. The program is designed as a coordinated transformational effort rather than a collection of independent grants. Every investment is intended to support a broader system transformation and improve outcomes for West Virginians. This slide gives a vision of RHTP, which is really focused on improving health outcomes, strengthening our rural workforce, and building a self-reliant economy focused on prevention, innovation, and partnership. We want to establish West Virginia as a center for rural health technology innovation. We want to strengthen access to care. We want to build a sustainable care delivery system. These priorities guide how all funding opportunities have been designed and evaluated. Here on this slide, you'll see an example of the flywheel in action. It illustrates how our 7 pillars are intended to work together around the needs of West Virginians, using the example of a working age adult with chronic disease. Rather than addressing challenges in isolation, it's designed to connect healthcare access, transportation, workforce, technology, wellness programs, and so forth, all as one flywheel in action. I'm now going to shift to the financial status. The next several slides will summarize where the funding stands today, what's been released, what remains in the pipeline, and how those funds are progressing through the state's review and award process. This slide provides a high-level view of all procurement funding across the program. On the left, approximately $167 million in procurement funding has already been posted publicly, most of which is moving through application review and award decisions. On the right, approximately $15 million remains in the procurement pipeline and is advancing through design, review, and posting activities. Just to be clear, the denominator there takes out the administrative costs of the program, which is about 10%, so we can focus on programmatic dollars. The takeaway here is the program status remains on track. This slide on the left will share our overall obligations and expenditures to date. So on the left, $38.8 million in procurement funding has been obligated, meaning that candidates in our CGI system, which is our grant system, have been selected and are currently moving through award finalization, contracting, and agreement execution. We are in contact with these awardees. However, the state is not naming selected candidates until grant agreements and contracts are fully executed. A lot of these awardees, we are working and negotiating statements of work, so we don't want to get ahead of that. As implementation continues, we anticipate making awards to more than 150 awardees across the program. The vast majority of the awardees are from the state of West Virginia. Of the 75 awards currently in some stage of processing, 73 are from the great state of West Virginia. Of the remaining 2, 1 operates facilities in the state of West Virginia, and the other is partnering directly with West Virginia organizations and bringing in their expertise to support program implementation. In addition, the state anticipates entering more than $60 million in awards into the system in the coming days. So this number of obligated funds will be increasing. I always describe us as being on the 1-yard line now. All the funding is out there. We're starting to get through the awardee process so we can start announcing who is getting these funds. So on the right on this slide, approximately $4.6 million has been expended across the program. Expenditures to date consist entirely of administrative costs, which also includes contractual support. And I want to be clear, by October, CMS is looking not for expenditures, they're looking for obligations. That's what the key is. We need to expend the full dollars by September of next year. So the key we're looking for this year is obligation. While early planning, when we had a discussion last time, we referenced approximately $12 million in contractor support. The final contract with our contractor was actually $8 million. When we submitted our application, we did our best estimate of what we could project we would estimate for contractor support. That number we had stated in our application is 12, but we're actually projecting $8 million for our contractor. And if you include the administrative costs that we're going to wrap up the federal fiscal year, we're looking at an additional under $2 million in administrative support. So the total administrative budget we are allotted is about $18.8 million. We're projecting to spend under $10 million. So again, the contractor support number is $8 million, and the total administrative dollars for the program that we're going to spend by the end of the federal fiscal year is under $10 million. With that additional administrative dollars that we will save the state of West Virginia, which we are projecting to be around $8 million, we are looking to reinvest those administrative dollars into programmatic dollars to reinvest into the state of West Virginia. This table provides a consolidated view of the funding pipelines across all 7 initiatives. The key takeaway is that nearly all the initiative funding has been posted or moved into application review, award, and contracting. The only initiative that has not yet been released is Rural Health Link, which is about $13.8 million, and we are in the coming weeks going to be doing that. On the rightmost column, you will find our funds obligated for award. We have selected candidates for activities across Health Tech Appalachia, Mountain State Care Force, Smart Care Catalyst, and Health to Prosperity. And again, we're currently finalizing grant agreements with those said candidates. The next section provides a brief update on each initiative in more detail. So the prior slide I just went over, these next 7 slides go into it in more detail. So it starts with a connected care grid, which is focused on improving access through technology-enabled care and virtual services. Today, all connected care grid funding has been posted and is moving through the process. I mentioned Rural Health Link. This initiative will support both physical transportation solutions and technology-enabled coordination. The full, as I mentioned, 13.8 remains in the pipeline to be posted. These are going to focus on EMS collaboratives, public transportation, mobility technology, and regional coordination hubs. Health Tech Appalachia, this is designed to attract innovation, investment, technology-enabled solutions to improve rural outcomes. Our Health Tech Appalachia funding is in the process of being awarded. One lead administrator will serve as the fiscal agent and independent evaluator of these catalyst funds. Mountain State Care Force, this is working toward addressing the workforce shortages in healthcare across West Virginia. Under this initiative, we have some of our first contract awards. One candidate has been selected to implement a statewide recruitment and relocation program designed to address healthcare workforce shortages in our rural communities. The program will support recruitment of licensed healthcare professionals through targeted outreach and provide relocation, retention, and community integration services such as housing navigation, spousal employment assistance, peer networking, and financial incentives. All remaining funding for this initiative has been posted and is currently under review. And investments focus on expanding training capacity and long-term workforce sustainability. Moving to Smart Care Catalyst, this is focused on helping providers become more efficient, financially sustainable, and prepared for value-based care models. A small portion of funding, $1.3 million, remains to be posted. It will support one future solicitation focused on improving care for older adults with complex medical and functional needs. Most Smart Care Catalyst funding, which is about $30 million, is under the review process. In green, you will see we've obligated about $14.1 million for the Provider Productivity Support Fund so far. This activity will have several awardees, so there are still additional dollars to be obligated. Next is Health to Prosperity. This is designed to help West Virginians overcome health-related barriers to employment. All funding has been posted, most is under review, and $2.4 million has been obligated. This is going to work toward supporting work-site-based care models, workforce catalyst programs, and Health to Work initiative focused on chronic conditions and behavioral health. Personal Health Accelerator. This is focused on prevention, nutrition, healthy lifestyles, and long-term wellness. We continue to face significant challenges related to food insecurity and obesity. All $29 million have been posted across 3 solicitations and is currently under evaluation. I'm going to now shift our focus from the funding status to oversight and accountability. Obviously, moving funds is very important, but doing so responsibly is equally important. And the next several slides outline the process that we are using to review, award, monitor, and oversee these investments. A common question that I receive is what happens after an application is submitted? Once the solicitation closes, applications enter a very structured state review process. Each solicitation receives dozens of applications on average. A team of 3 to 7 reviewers are responsible for evaluating all applicants. Each application requires the state approximately 10 or more labor hours to review and score. I will review the application process in the next couple of slides to better understand what goes into those 10 hours. The state follows a standardized scoring and eval process, so every application is reviewed fairly and thoughtfully. Applicants should expect decisions by this summer. For selected applicants, an award will be created and an agreement will be sent for signature. This slide summarizes what we have seen strong applicants demonstrate across the funding opportunities. They show clearly how funding will enable new care or enhanced ways of delivering care. They show operational readiness. They show how they're going to deliver a speed to launch. They demonstrate the ability to support state data system integration and standardized reporting. They demonstrate sustainability. And we had received a question on this, and this is a requirement for grant consideration. Sustainability is a requirement per CMS in the Notice of Funding Opportunity, and that is reflected in our AFAs. The AFAs do state in Section 4 that long-term project sustainability must be described how the project will be self-sustaining after year 1. Grantees must also demonstrate a clear path to financial sustainability independent of these RHTP funds within the first 2 to 3 years of receiving those initial dollars. We're seeing strong applicants demonstrate metric accountability. We're seeing strong fiscal stewardship and compliance. And we're seeing an innovation signal. And what I mean by that is they're not simply maintaining the status quo, they're proposing new or enhanced approaches that can be integrated into their operations. So how are we reviewing grant applications? I went over this a little bit in the last legislative update, and this shows a high-level review of a step-by-step process for reviewing grant applications. This is not the RFPs and RFQs, this is the grant applications. So step 1 is the application evaluation by the committee. Step 2 is a recommendation memo. Step 3 is a budget narrative review and redlining. So once those approvals are obtained, the budget narrative is provided to the selected awardee for redlining. The focus there is on validating budget assumptions, allowable costs, allocations, and compliance. And then we enter into the state review process in step 4. So after those budget narratives are finalized, information is entered into the necessary state systems, and the package moves through multiple state departments. There was a question that was asked about the role of the Office of Shared Administration in the grant process. The Office of Shared Administration plays a similar role with RHTP as they do with all subrecipient grants administered for all 3 departments for which OSA supports. The strategy there is to ensure a uniform level of administrative oversight from pre-award to post-award through several key mechanisms. That's grant policy, that's CRM applications, standardized grant agreements, risk assessments and certifications, audit tracking, checklist of required activities. Step 5, we go into the award notifications. Step 6, we get into the contract signature process. And step 7 is the contract execution. I would like to also note what you see here on your screen is the state's grant review process, which was approved by CMS. Our process is consistent with review approaches used by other major grant-making organizations, including the National Institutes of Health. So how do procurements differ, the RFPs, the RFQs? The majority of our program, the majority of the activities are grants. There's only, at this point, I believe 3, either RFQs or RFPs. This slide shows that review process for procurements, such as RFPs. The one key difference here is procurements include both a technical proposal and a cost proposal. These processes are designed to create a documented, consistent, and accountable pathway from application review to final award. I had provided this slide at our last meeting as well. I'm just providing it for reference. From the May meeting, we discussed the program's cost center structure and how we track the RHTP funding at a detailed level through the financial system, through our established granular financial controls. We have additional financial controls in place. Our OSA, Office of Shared Administration, has been working on several initiatives to enhance the structure that's historically been in place. We have a new grant agreement revision. We have a new subrecipient monitoring and management policy. We have enhanced system controls to promote efficiency while leveraging our controls in our system, which includes eliminating manual redundancy, advanced query capabilities, enhanced reporting, compliance, and oversight. This is a slide for subrecipient monitoring, and it explains how the state monitors recipients after awards are issued. This is our process for overseeing the grant recipients throughout the award lifecycle to validate that our public funds are used appropriately, that goals are achieved, and federal and state requirements are met. The first part of that process you see on the screen is eligibility and risk review. The second is a grant agreement and reporting requirements, financial and programmatic monitoring, audit review and corrective action, and then the final part is closeout and accountability. The key point is that the state's responsibility does not end when an award is issued. Monitoring continues throughout the full award lifecycle. So here we have some upcoming reporting deadlines and CMS requirements. This section is important because RHTP is a federal program and we must comply with the federal rules, which includes allowable costs, spending caps, reporting, timelines. So you'll see on this slide, this is our CMS expense spending caps. Because RHTP is federally funded, there are specific requirements in place, and I'll just highlight a few key examples, which include limits on administrative costs, provider payments, electronic medical record replacement activities, and certain salary-related expenses. CMS also requires detailed documentation demonstrating that expenditures are necessary, reasonable, and tied directly to approved RHTP initiatives within the initial application. The key takeaway is these requirements are not optional. They're reviewed throughout the application evaluation, contracting, and ongoing monitoring process. This next slide is the CMS allowable cost slide. This provides examples of the types of investment that CMS intends these funds to support. These are generally activities that improve access, strengthen the workforce, expand technology and infrastructure, support innovation, and improve outcomes. One point I would emphasize is that getting funding out the door is a shared responsibility between the state and the applicants. We need applicants to respond quickly to requests for information and to submit accurate budgets that align with CMS requirements. For example, we have received some proposed budgets that include costs requiring additional review to determine whether they are allowable under the federal rules. That may involve clarifying how a position supports a particular initiative, validating that a cost is not replacing an existing funding source, or confirming that a proposed service is not already reimbursable through an existing program. When those questions arise, the award process can slow down. When that happens, we work very collaboratively with the applicants to refine the budget, but we ask that the applicants work closely with us and expeditiously, because as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about over 150 awardees in a very compressed timeline. These reviews are an important process of responsible stewardship. Our goal is to move the funding quickly, but also to make sure every dollar is spent in a way that is compliant, defensible, and aligned with our program objectives. This next slide shows unallowable costs that CMS does not permit. Examples include activities such as replacing existing funding sources, paying for services already reimbursable through insurance, certain major construction activities, and other costs that fall outside the goals of the program. Put simply, if a budget contains costs that do not comply with federal requirements, we cannot move forward with the award. We're operating in a well-defined federal framework, and the state has established processes to keep awarded funds aligned with those requirements throughout the life cycle of this program. So we're tracking two streams of parallel activity, as you can see here on this screen, which are color-coded for clarity. We have our strategic financial milestones, which are shown in pink. There are three major one-time deadlines that govern the entire $200 million appropriation. The CMS compliance reporting in yellow represents the ongoing routine reporting we submit to our federal partners to ensure continuous oversight. And our first CMS annual progress report is due at the end of this month, August 30th. So 3 other important crucial dates, October 30th of this year. This is the deadline by which we must legally obligate all the money in the program. This means all those contracts have to be signed. Next is July 31st, 2027. That's our own internal deadline for our grantees and partners to submit their final invoices to the state. This gives us a buffer to keep us on track while being flexible with the next key milestone, which is the end of September of 2027. And that's the deadline for final distribution, meaning all cash has to be out the door by the end of the federal grant period. We also expect that CMS will announce year 2 funding on October 31st of this year. To close, RHTP has made significant progress since our last legislative update. We remain in compliance. Funding opportunities are moving through the pipeline very fast, and financial controls are being used to support accountability and stewardship of these dollars. The program has drafted all year 1 funding opportunities. We've released over 80% of them, and we're now moving from funding release into review, award, contracting, and implementation. Going forward, RHTP can continue to provide periodic updates to the legislature in a consistent format. Those updates can be organized around funds posted, funds awarded, funds obligated, funds expended, project milestones achieved, and other key metrics. This type of reporting structure will help provide continued transparency into both financial progress and program implementation and outcomes. We're committed to keeping the legislature informed as the program moves forward. Thank you, and thank you for your time and continued engagement. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Are there questions of the Secretary? The delegate from the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary, thank you very much for being here today and for the thorough presentation. I'll make a quick statement, then I'll get to my questions. I can't speak for the rest of my colleagues in the room, but this presentation is exactly what I would be looking for. So my 2-cent suggestion is future times just updating these slides with their award amounts, especially in the funding allocation. So thank you very much for that. I wanted to talk about a couple things that do concern me, though it did bring up some questions as much as it answered. Currently, you've released the funding. I think you said before about 167 of the 182.
Correct.
But the obligation's only been about 38 million, 39 million, is that correct?
Right.
With the October 31st deadline coming up in less than 3 months, how confident are you of getting the obligations of another 140 million out the door?
I'm 100% confident. As I mentioned earlier, we're really at the 1-yard line. A lot of these processes are at that final stage. Again, 75 of the 150 are there. The rest are in that pipeline in some manner. So it took a lot to get where we are today, but we are there now.
Okay.
And we also have almost fully staffed staff and a lot of support behind the scenes. So I'm very confident.
Well, thank you for that response. So you said almost staffed. I think last time you spoke to us, you had about 10 staff in RCP. Is that still around the same, or are there more?
Plus or minus about 3 or 4.
Okay.
I don't have the exact number, but it's about average for the country is over 12, and we're over 12 around that.
Okay. I noticed in the timeline with CMS, you have obviously, we all know September 30th of next year, 2027
Correct.
is when state has to distribute all funds. You have your own internal deadline of July 31st to get in. So based on that, I'm assuming you're going to get all the funds distributed well before the September 30th, 2027 deadline.
That's the goal, yes.
That's okay. On the committees, I wanted to go back real quick. You had a slide, I can't remember what number it is. You talked about, you had a number of 3 to 7 members.
Yes.
And then, reviewers is what you called them. And then on subsequent slides, you had the committees. Are those the same people?
No, no, no.
Oh, okay.
The reviewers are the reviewers for each awardee or each activity. We have 35 activities, right? So for each activity, you have to have a process of evaluating those applications. Those reviewers are those people. The panels are the panels that are advising this program. So you have the Health Tech Appalachia panel, which is focused on the technology component.
Okay.
And then you have the advisory panel for the whole program that is advising the whole program.
How many committee members are there for, roughly?
Around 10 to 15.
And do they overlap? Do any members overlap any
No,
of the pillars?
I don't think so.
Okay.
But entities, there could be, like WVU might be on both or something
Right.
like that.
Okay. Back on the reviewers, a team of 3 to 7 reviewers, is it most of the time 7 reviewers and most of the time 3 reviewers? I mean, what
Most of the
dictates that?
time for the grants, I believe it's 3. You have to have an odd number in case there's.
Yeah, of course.
Right. And then for the procurements, it's 5 or 7. I believe one of ours has 7 and some of the others have 5.
Okay. I wanted to back up real quick to the contractor, and I appreciate the update there. Remember, you talked about
Yes.
12 million, and then obviously it's 8 million. I want to go back to the very beginning of when those proposals were submitted.
Okay.
Any reason why KPMG was chosen over any of the other proposals submitted?
It was meritorious.
Okay.
It's a competitive process, and I don't remember how many we reviewed, but it was around 5 or more.
I appreciate that we're not spending 12, so that's great. And we're at 8 and way below the administrative costs. One of my concerns, though, when I went back and looked through everything, was that KPMG was awarded the initial contract based on their proposal, but then turned around a few months later and awarded an amendment, which added $4.4 million to be $8 million, which is what you talked about earlier. So
I think that was because the initial proposal had, it was coming up for renewal. We renewed it. I don't believe it was, I guess, what's your question?
my question was that, were they awarded the original grant of 3.6 million because they were a lower bidder? It made sense. So you said meritorious, but then turn around 3 months later and were awarded 4.4 million additional dollars. I was just wondering,
I'd have to look at that. All I could say is that when you're in the midst of implementing something like this, we had our contractors on board. We want to keep moving, right?
Of course.
That's probably how that worked, but I'll get the details for you.
Okay, I appreciate that. I thought I had a couple more. Sorry, I want to make sure. I think that was it. Apologize. I thought I had one more, but I can't remember what it was. Once again, I do appreciate the presentation. Would appreciate updates just to the same presentation in the future. I think it's a really good one. So thank you very much for answering a lot of questions with this presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Delegate.
The delegate from the 25th.
Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here today. My first question is I really want to dig into this federal framework and how it affects people in real life. And so I understand from a lot of experts that West Virginia stands to lose about $1 billion per year in Medicaid funding. I want to see how does the Rural Health Transformation Program stack up to those lost monies?
So, thank you for the question. Obviously, I don't oversee Medicaid, but this program is separate from Medicaid. It's meant to be transformational and really move how healthcare is delivered so that we can have efficiencies beyond Medicaid. So it's not meant to address anything Medicaid related.
No, and I understand that, but I also understand being the Secretary of Health, probably have a working knowledge of that, I would think. Can you not speak to that, of what that is?
I don't.
And, or, hold on. And, or, are we able to use any of these dollars to backfill that loss?
As I mentioned, the application can't be used to supplant existing funding sources. So it has to be new. It has to be a new way of delivering care. So it has to be pretty much unrelated. Now, we could be targeting similar populations. We could be targeting Medicaid census tracts in some of the proposals and activities.
Okay. And will this funding that we're getting, will this be permanent or is it temporary?
This is a 5-year funding. So the first year was about $200 million, and by October, we're estimating, whether that happens or not, October, November, we're supposed to hear about year 2 funding, but it is 5 years.
So with the loss of funding from this big bill, what is, I know you spoke about strategy on your slideshow. What is the strategy to sustain funding after the 5 years when it expires?
So again, I'm not going to address the Medicaid piece. I also would push back on this loss number that you're stating. But the strategy, as I mentioned in the presentation, is every dollar we invest, these $200 million, by years 2, 3, 4, they need to demonstrate sustainability so that they don't rely on federal dollars to move forward. So whether that's enhanced reimbursement, Medicaid waivers, Medicare waivers, there's a lot of different strategies these activities and vendors could go down to get funding post 5-year award process.
Yes, sir. And I noticed you said you would push back on that number that I said. Is it the number that you would push back on, or that there was any loss at all?
Yeah, I'd have to see how that's being calculated. Maybe you could educate me on how that number is being calculated.
So you're not refuting there's a loss in a number, correct? Just the amount of how much was lost?
Again, I don't have the knowledge right here, but I welcome a conversation with you on how that number is being calculated. I believe that number is being calculated if everything changed, if we don't account for any progress, any shift to a new model of care. That's stagnation, which I would again push back. This program is not about stagnation, and it's not related to Medicaid, and we are trying to deliver funds in a new transformative way.
Yes, sir. If you look at slides 10 and 11, I believe you quoted some numbers on those grants and awards. I think you were talking about in-state versus out-of-state. Correct me if I'm wrong. I might have misheard you.
Yes, you're right.
Could you go back over those numbers again,
Yeah,
please?
so of the 75 or so awardees that are going through the pipeline, 73, so about 97%, are from the state of West Virginia. The other two, one operates facilities in the state of West Virginia, and the other one has partnered with entities or an entity in the state of West Virginia.
Yes, sir. And where are those two from?
Again, I can't give you the names of those entities at this time. We're in active negotiations.
Yes, sir. Also, going back to slide 22, I do believe this is what my good friend from the 23rd was questioning in that process. So is this something new with the rural health transformation, this process on bidding and contracts, or have we all always followed this?
It's very similar to a lot of existing processes. It's similar to what other states are using as well.
And do we have anything that details that standardized scoring and evaluation process?
I can get back to you to see if there's any additional details I have not provided that we could.
And if you could, for the, I guess, education of the body, if you could send that to all the committee members.
Okay.
Because one of the questions that I have with this potential loss, and we can go back and forth how much that is, I want to make sure we're being good fiscal stewards and we're saving every dollar that we can. And so I want to make sure if there are West Virginia companies that can deliver on services and do it as good, if not better, at a lower price, that we are affording them that, during the contracting process.
Okay.
Is that a thing or no, to prioritize West Virginia companies?
Yeah, we are prioritizing West Virginia companies.
Okay. And we've always adhered to that for cost-saving measures?
All I can say is if you are a West Virginia company, you are being prioritized.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further questions? Delegate from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Singh, thank you for being here today. I want to draw your focus to my questions. You had a section of your presentation that focused on the initiative-by-initiative funding updates, and each one of them had, if you will, the funding stream, and then in the upper right-hand corner, you had state rankings. And as I was going through your presentation, the focus of those streams and the state rankings seem to be, connected. However, on page 18, I don't see necessarily the as clear linkage, so I'm going to ask you to go back to that and help me understand. That's on the Smart Care Catalyst, and the state ranking that is cited there is that West Virginia has the second highest per capita cost in the nation for hospital services. The overview of this stream then talks about equipping rural providers with payment and data tools to streamline operations, reduce administrative burdens, and enhance patient care. It aims to improve financial sustainability and promote value by transitioning providers towards value-based care models that reward outcomes, if you followed me, okay?
Yes, sir.
So that feels like, at least the opening sentence of that overview is like we're going to help streamline that, and most approaches to reduce cost look at like a Pareto analysis as to where all the cost is broken out, and implicitly that would suggest that these payment and data tools are where there is a undue financial burden in comparison to what other states are doing. Is that true?
Oh, all I would say is that that example you're citing in the top right corner is just one metric. We're not looking at just one. And this Smart Care Catalyst is focused. We have a lot of applicants here, so one of the funds in Smart Care Catalyst is Provider Productivity Support Fund, where you're going to have small provider offices that we're looking to help make more efficient to offset any of those costs that they might be experiencing, to help them deliver more efficient care and focus on the patient interaction. So that metric, again, it's not that Smart Care Catalyst is just focused on that single metric up there. That's just an example of what it could be also addressing.
Okay. So then I'll draw your attention to the closing phrase of that overview statement. It says, transitioning providers toward value-based care models that reward outcomes. Can you explain that or bring it down to at least help me understand what, as a practitioner at one of those rural hospitals or rural health facilities, what will the Smart Care Catalyst bring to me?
So we're trying to shift how we deliver care in this state from fee-for-service as much as possible to value-based care. What does that mean for the patient? The question should be more that it's quality outcomes, that the providers are being awarded or rewarded for quality outcomes for the patient. That's what the end goal is. So, for example, in neighboring states, they have different models. One model is called Aspire, A-S-P-I-R-E. Another model is AHEAD, A-H-E-A-D. These models are focused on exactly that, shifting from fee-for-service to global budget to total cost of care, so that providers who are productive and focus on outcomes are the ones who are awarded. That also then benefits the patient. So what you're going to see in this funding basket is to be as targeted as possible to award those providers, which then will benefit patients.
But if I'm following this approach, this does not, the $45.6 million in this funding stream or this initiative cannot be used to provide those funders. It's the development of a tool that would help that doctor or practitioner.
That's part of it. That's part of it. So there's multiple activities within Smart Care Catalyst. So Provider Productivity Support Fund is one activity, and then you have value-based care initiatives, which are other activities.
So again, to me, this would seem to say, we're going to give you a tool, and if you utilize this tool, you'll have better outcomes and your, if you will, compensation through the system, as opposed to just, well, I issued X number of prescriptions or took X number of x-rays. No, there is a health outcome that is based on the patient's, if you will, outcome, as opposed to some processing paperwork. Is that true?
I think you're combining the two, so they're separate. You have one which is going to focus on the actual efficiencies delivered in those office settings. The second is value-based care modeling. They're not technically combined into one per se.
Okay, but basically this initiative is about 25% of the total, rural health transformation project spend, And to me, I was struggling to say, okay, well, if we're going to spend $45 million, are the things like the payment and data tools to streamline operations really going to save that much money to offset that cost? And to me, I'm still struggling, frankly, maybe it deserves a offline conversation to understand if we're going to spend this amount of money, how's it going to generate the value that is expected of such an expenditure?
Yeah, and I appreciate it and happy to discuss offline, but we are receiving a lot of these applications, and when we review them, we are looking at those principles. What's the ROI for both providers, patients, when it comes to outcomes? So we are evaluating all of that.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Singh.
Thank
You,
you for the
Mr. Chairman.
Senator from Randolph.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here. On slide 26, it talks about 30-plus cost centers being established so that it can more easily be, tracked at the granular level. Would it be possible for us to get a copy of those cost centers and what has been expended so far in fiscal year 26, or what was in 2026, and what has been so far in 2027 per those cost centers?
Okay, I'll get with my team. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate from the 23rd.
Quick second bite, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much. Secretary, sorry, I remember my question. So just to clarify, $0 have been actually awarded today out to, like, there have been checks cut to anybody, but you still have a year and 3 months to actually spend that money, right?
Well, the vendors have been contacted. I guess it's a nuanced question because they have been awarded in our CGI system. We haven't publicly announced it yet.
Okay.
Because we are finalizing some statement of works with those awardees.
Okay.
So it's a little nuanced. I mean, technically they've been awarded.
Okay. And then you talked about lowering the admin costs, which is great. I mean, that's awesome. And it possibly opening those, some of those funds up for AFAs. Are you concerned at all with there a potential decrease in funding for West Virginia in the future? And could you bank the admin costs? I mean, I don't see it happening, but what if CMS will award us $100 million? Well, that would cut our admin costs to $10 million, right?
Right.
Is there any thought to hang on to
in that case, we would still be under, right?
You're correct. You are correct, sir. But I was just trying to figure out if there's any idea or thought to hang on to the admin costs at all. And you don't need to answer that. I'm just concerned that, and I appreciate the willingness to put that money back in AFAs. I'm just concerned that a potential, we have 4 more announcements coming up in the next 4 years.
It might be something worth considering if that was possible, because we have to obligate all of it, even the admin, by October. So.
Yeah. And then my last question, and I'll stop. I can appreciate how stringent the process is. It's really good, the fiscal responsibilities. But I have heard from some national organizations how cumbersome West Virginia's AFAs and grant applications are, with some questions previously about some West Virginia companies. You did highlight that you're receiving dozens of applications, but are you concerned at all that we may not be getting as many as proposals due to the cumbersome, how cumbersome it is?
I actually would say the opposite. We have received more applications than I could have ever imagined for some of these. I mean, it's so much that we've had to at times bring in additional staff from my broader department to assist in the review process.
Okay.
So it's a lot.
That's good news. Okay. Thank you again, Secretary. Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate from the 12th.
Where is it?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your contract with McKinsey that filed the application, are we finished with that application, and are we finished with McKinsey on their contract?
Yeah, I believe that ended December 31st.
And how much was that contract for?
I don't have the number on me.
Okay.
I think we had sent, I believe, Delegate, we had sent that. But I can check.
Okay. In January 26, you asked for an emergency request to expedite, which is supposed to be limited to 9 months, the fact that KPMG for their contract.
Sure.
That contract expires in 9 months. Is that correct?
Yes, it expired. Yeah,
all right. So what is KPMG going to resubmit? Are you going to open contract process?
Yes.
at the end of September, I assume?
Yes, sir. We are going to open that to a competitive process.
Okay. And are we, along with the gentleman from the 23rd, talking about continuation of administrative costs rather than getting the monies out into the program, why is there a reason, once you've got this set up and rolling, why would you need KPMG to continue?
Well, we have to evaluate that based on the needs. That's why, you know, it was procured under emergency. So at the end of September, we'll see where we stand, because we do have our team that we're almost fully staffed with, and we need to evaluate if we do continue with a KPMG or someone, to what extent would that be? I would say that having that subject matter expertise has been extremely important. And remember, we are in a 50-state competition. So we need to stay at the top of that so we could potentially be awarded more dollars and perform better than a lot of the states in this country.
So will there be another application to the legislature for authorization of spending coming in January for the next group of dollars?
I believe so.
And how much would that be? Another $199 million?
It depends.
Or just the $100 million?
It'll be announced at the end of October or November. So at that time, we'll know the number that CMS will be giving us.
The reviewers that review these contracts for the vendors, can you give me background information on those reviewers? Are they employees of the Department of Health, or are they outside vendors that are doing the review, or are they in the governor's office? Who are the reviewers?
I have to check with my legal counsel on if I can give state employee names. But they are state employees.
First of all, are they state employees?
They are state employees.
Are they employees of the Department of Health?
One moment while I consult with my general counsel. There are employees within the Department of Health participating, and they are state employees.
Okay, are there other employees outside the Department of Health that are reviewers?
Yes.
Are they with the governor's office?
We do have executive branch employees involved.
Are there people that are not employed by the state that are through the governor's office as contract employees or associated with the governor's office in the review process?
I don't believe so.
Is the governor involved in the review process?
The governor and myself are part of the review process. When a decision memo is drafted, the governor and I do review the decision memo, and then that decision memo does go back to the committee for input as well. So as I mentioned in the last May meeting, the governor and I are involved in the process. This is a governor-led initiative, unlike others, or like other states across this nation.
So the 75 vendors that may be awarded contracts for services will have to be reviewed by the governor?
Has to be reviewed by the governor and I.
And do you know if there's any prior relationship with the governor's office with any of these vendors?
I'm unaware of that.
Or is there any prior relationship with the Department of Health? Do any of these vendors currently have other contracts with the Department of Health or any other contracts within the state of West Virginia?
It's 75 plus vendors. I wouldn't be able to answer that.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Further questions? Delegate from the 25th for a second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Secretary. Just to piggyback really quickly off of my friends from the 12th and the 23rd, those 75 vendors that you spoke about, I know I asked about who they were, and you said you couldn't speak on that because there were several that were still in the process, correct?
Correct.
How many are finalized?
You mean, so they're awarded in our CGI system, but The final step on that process is signature by the CFO, and that signature has not yet occurred, but will be occurring in the coming days and weeks.
So I just want to make sure that I am correct in what I'm hearing. So you said earlier some of them were still going through the process, which led me to believe that some of them are finalized. It might not have been written, but they have been finalized as being awarded. Is that?
I'll have to check. I don't know exactly how many or where they exactly are. Just they are in some piece of that process. That could even be final signature. I don't have that number.
Yes, sir. And completely understand the ones that are still going through the process of being evaluated, but the ones that have been finalized, at least internally, we would like to have that information, share it with us who they are.
Yeah, and I'll check with our CFO how many have gotten signature, if not.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Senator from Randolph, quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you just touch on real quickly how value-based care kind of connects with other value-based bills and models that we've had, like Senate Bill 231 regarding substance use disorder? How are those value-based models gonna mesh?
We've had conversations with Medicaid because, again, we have to make sure we don't have anything duplicative here. So if we're targeting a value-based care and they also are there different areas, substance use disorder, I'm not saying that's what we're doing, but are there areas within that they are not targeting that we could benefit the state in a multi-pronged effort? So yes, we are having conversations with Human Services.
Is there one that kind of preempts over the other when it comes to this? I'm assuming West Virginia laws, we'd go with that model versus rural health, but is there one that preempts?
I'm not sure how to answer that, honestly, but I don't think any preempts either.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Seeing no further lights, Mr. Secretary, thank you.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll have Revenue Secretary Eric Nelson. Eric.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Eric Nelson, Secretary of Revenue, and I've enjoyed the discussion so far here today. Anyway, just a quick overview from the revenue standpoint. I do first want to introduce our new budget director, Aaron Snodgrass, if you would stand. He's been on board since June 1, former CFO with the health facilities, and brings a lot of new light to the table, but we're glad to have him aboard. If I can hit top line on a couple of things, we did close out the books the end of July. Deputy Secretary Shirley, if time permits, can go over some of this, but on the big picture, fiscal year 26 ended with $5.7 billion of revenue, roughly $370 million over budget. That was about 7% above estimate and 3.2% over the prior year. And that compares to an inflation rate of 3.5. On the expense side, we do have that surplus of 370. There's $245 million that this body approved in the back of the budget. Those amounts will be funded prior to month end, and it will be led with $100 million obviously going to roads, I believe. The third big highlight that I'd like to give some information to the chairman and the members, July 1, we started a new year. Cash is at zero on that date. The first thing we do is borrow from our rainy day fund according to code. We can borrow up to 1.5% of general revenue, and that equated to $82 million this year. And that is very much in line with what we've done in prior years. And that helps us to carry cash flow needs for the first 90 days, and we have to repay that within 90 days. Second point that I'd like to bring the members' attention to, we do a calculation for the personal income tax trigger. It will not be hit this year. We were significantly below, so an automatic trigger for fiscal year 28 will not occur, and leadership has been informed of that. Lastly, we've started our budget process. August 1, instructions went out to all agencies, and the general instructions were to be at or below current levels. Agencies have been asked to let us know of future funding needs. And then lastly, to bring more information to the table as it relates to federal programs or federal dollars that may be in trouble of not receiving in the future. With that said, Mr. Chairman, we could go to Deputy Secretary Pete Shirley.
Sure. Dr. Shirley, come on up.
Good morning, everyone. Pete Shirley, Deputy Revenue Secretary, and I will just go ahead and dive right into it. So as the Secretary mentioned, I think the biggest number here on this first slide that everyone looks at is down there at that bottom row, that 370.6. That was our collections over estimate for FY26 on the General Revenue Fund. You can see right below that, that was 7% above estimate, 3.2% year over year. Those are all things the Secretary mentioned. One thing I want to add to that is that if you take out severance, which is historically volatile, and we're going to talk about that volatility here in a second, we were 233.7 over estimate, or 4.7% over estimate, and 78.5 or 1.5% year over year. So when you take out the non-severance and look at just sort of our core revenue growth, it was a little bit less. You can see there the big things relative to estimate on the year were PIT, severance, which I just talked about, sales, and then interest income. And again, interest income is also interesting because it's down 44.4 million year over year. Flipping ahead to the year-to-date collections, so fiscal year-to-date, this is just through July. We're only 1 month through the fiscal year so far. 11.3 million over estimate for July. That's 3%. The other thing I would call your attention to is in that bottom row there on the right-hand side, 0.7 or $700,000 in year-over-year growth, or 0.2%. So comparing July of 25 to July of 26, very little revenue growth. The big reason for that, looking at that third column there, the FY year-to-date 2027 relative to estimate, PIT and sales were both 11 million over estimate, so that's good to see our two largest revenue sources, sort of the base underlying economy growing. But severance, again, talking about that volatility, was 12.5 million under for the month of July. That's not quite as bad. I ran today's daily revenue report. As of now, it's still under, but it's about 4.5 million under. So we've had a little bit of bounce back there. But again, that's volatile, and you're going to see that here in a couple of slides from now. So I think those are the really big highlights I'd like to hit on general revenue. This next slide is just our trends over time. You can see that top line, that red line, that's the PIT cuts. You can really see those PIT cuts that we've done over the past few years. Sales tax, the yellow line below that, continues to grow. I guess maybe the purple line is next. That's all other, so that's anything that's not PIT, sales, corporate net, or severance, relatively flat. Severance, you can see the peaks and valleys there. You can see the volatility of severance in the blue line. And then corporate net, you can see the downward trend over that the past year or so. And a big part of that is our conformity to the big, beautiful bill, which we did as part of the PIT and corporate net update bills this past session. And I will note that of all of our surrounding states, West Virginia was the only one to fully conform to the big, beautiful bill. So hopefully that will provide some advantageous tax treatment for us relative to our surrounding states going forward. The next two slides are our regular state severance tax, which includes everything. Again, you can see the peaks and valleys there. I'd note those last couple months that started to drop off. These are annualized 12-month trailing trends. So when you see dips or increases here, this is not a single month that sort of is high or is low and is pulling this down. This is an average over a period of 12 months. Important to keep that in mind. And then the total severance tax revenue there on the right, I've broken that out into coal, which is the blue line, natural gas is the yellow, and all other, which is the red line. The all other line is really just natural gas liquids. There's very little, I think gravel and sandstone, I think maybe are the other things that are in there. There are other minerals. The one other thing that I think is important here to point out, this is an 11-year look back. So that first time period there, that June of 2015, that's essentially fiscal year 2015. And then the most recent point, June 26, is fiscal year 2026. And way back there, coal was about 62.7% of our total severance tax revenue. And then the natural gas and liquids was, the other 37%. And today that has more than flipped. So in that most recent time frame, coal was less than 30% of severance tax collections, and the natural gas and the liquids was more than 70%. So a really, really stark change in our severance tax collections over the past decade or so. Fiscal year 2026 state road fund ended about $100 million under estimate for the year. The big thing there was federal reimbursement. I mentioned this, I think, back in June at Canaan, but DOT has talked about how in response to floods, they've spent a lot more time responding to FEMA requests, and so they're starting to catch back up on that. That's the big reason that was under. Motor fuel tax also ended under estimate. One thing to point out there, and there was negative growth year over year. High gas prices, people consume less fuel, and the motor fuel rate is a flat amount per gallon, so that's really that's driven primarily by consumption. That's not affected by prices directly. The other thing that I want to point out here is that you see $148 million in year-over-year growth. That's a little bit misleading because, one, there was a $100 million surplus appropriation in FY 2026 that came in August, similar to how there's going to be 125 this year as all the surplus appropriations get taken care of. But in FY 24, at the end of 24, in May, there was a special session where we increased the revenue estimates for the year and appropriated $150 million to roads in FY 24. That money otherwise would have been in the back of the budget and would have hit in FY 25. So if you actually put in that $150 million here instead of saying it would have happened in August, but it got moved up to give them the money right away, we actually would have had negative year-over-year growth in the state road fund. So the main point that I want to make there is that despite what you see here, the state road fund is largely flat. Again, this is just the first month of FY 2026. Motor fuel tax is the one thing that I want to point out there. It's above estimate, so that's good to see. We'll have to keep an eye on that. Motor fuel tax can be subject to timing issues because it is an end of the month type of thing, so you can see fluctuations month to month. That's something that we will be keeping an eye on going forward. And those are my slides. And Mr. Chairman, if you would like, Aaron can come up and present the budget stuff for the end of
Aaron, come on up.
26.
Aaron, welcome to Joint Finance.
All right, thank you. Good morning. Very quickly, looking at the slide here, this is just a breakdown of each cabinet department for general revenue regular appropriations for 2026. You can see in the first column what's appropriated. Second column, what was expended. Our reappropriations of $150.8 million and $16.9 million have expired from our regular appropriations. Next slide there is our FY 2026 year-end summary for general revenue. As you can see there at the top, actual receipts over estimate is a $370.6 million. That's been talked about. There was also $822,000 of unappropriated balance from the 2026, which brings us to $371.4 million of actual receipts over regular appropriation. The next section there is just various adjustments, reappropriations that expired, surplus appropriations expired, and regular appropriations. That brings us to an unappropriated surplus balance of $393.3 million. And as Secretary mentioned, Section 9 of the budget, we had $245,350,000 of appropriation in Section 9, which then brings us to an unappropriated general revenue surplus available for appropriation of $147.9 million. The next slide is a simple breakdown of the lottery fund. Game revenue and administrative surplus brings a total to $219.8 million. You can see there are FY26 lottery appropriations of 157, fire and EMS transfers of 24 million. Those transfers took place in May and June of this past year. Doing the math there, $38.4 million. Section 10 of the budget bill has surplus appropriations from lottery of $16.7 million, bringing us to an unappropriated lottery surplus available for appropriation of $21.7 million. And finally, excess lottery, gaming revenue, and administrative surplus total $362.5 million, minus the appropriations, brings us to an unappropriated surplus balance of $28.9 million. Section 11 of the budget bill had surplus appropriations of 21.3, which brings us to an unappropriated excess lottery surplus of 7.5 million. The bottom of this slide totals those three numbers up, which brings us to a total surplus available for appropriation of $177,283,272.39. Next couple slides, rainy day balance. Just to give you a quick update on rainy day balance at the end of the fiscal year. You can see there, rainy day B is the blue section of the column there, and rainy day A is the yellow. Rainy day B balanced $665.8 million. Rainy day A, $814.9 million, for a total of $1.48 billion in our rainy day balance. PIT Reserve Fund, this is the fund used to give timely personal income tax refunds to taxpayers. In June of this year, we transferred over $33.7 million, what's brought that fund to a total balance of $493 million. And in the FY27 budget, there is an additional $29 million appropriated to that, which we will do in this fiscal year. Next couple of slides are slides you've already seen. These are 2025 numbers. The updated numbers will be available in December or January. You can see Piers is funded to 102.6% of liability, and the teacher's retirement system at 85.9%. And I'll turn it back over to Dr. Shirley.
Just really, really quickly, I'd mentioned this slide back in May, and I see Senator Queen giving me a thumbs up here, but one thing that I believe had been asked about, I can't remember if it was you or not, or if it was somebody else, but someone asked if we had a county by county breakdown of this, and so there you go. So this is a county by county breakdown of net migration. Anything that is in green is positive, so I think it's pretty good to see that about half the counties actually have net migration. I think when we talk about this, we think about the Eastern Panhandle and maybe Mon County and pretty much nowhere else, but there's actually a significant number of counties that have seen positive net migration. The ones that are in yellow here are between 0 and 100, so they have had net out migration, but it is within 100 people, so really close to even. Orange, -100 to -600, and then the red counties, Kanawha, then a good chunk of the southern coalfields, anything more negative than 600. And this is the total change from April 1, 2020 to July 1, 2025. So this is not a 1 year look back. This is about a little over 5 years. And revenue highlights from neighboring states. I won't go through all the details here, but just broad point of this, we're relatively on par with our neighbors in terms of year-over-year growth and revenue surpluses, with the exception of Maryland, who had to use rainy day money to balance their FY 2026 budget.
Great, thank you. Are there questions of the Department of Revenue? Senator Oliverio.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one quick question. The surplus appropriations of fiscal year 26, have those gone out to the agencies yet? I know the timing is close.
Yeah, great question. August 3rd, my staff began the process of transferring those. That went out to the agency. They have to do an expenditure schedule for those, just like any other budget. We expect those to be transferred out, I'll conservatively say by the end of next week.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Further questions? Senator from Harrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just very quickly, Mr. Secretary, this is not a question for you, but I have heard the word mainframe way too many times the last 24 hours, and I know you used to be my co-chair of technology. In your budgeting meetings, technology is going to come to roost eventually. It's probably going to be this budget cycle. If there is a way that we can look maybe across state agencies and maybe try to bid some of these technology upgrades out. I know that's not in your job description, but you're going to be presenting us a budget in a few short months, and I'm probably going to be asking those questions as we talk about technology upgrades. So if you could try and champion one more thing in your job description, I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Questions? Do you have any? Delegate from the 12th.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
Oh, there you go. The question before the committee is on adjournment. All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. We're adjourned.
Good afternoon, everyone. I call the meeting to order. The committee clerk will take a silent roll call.